All right. All right, guys. Well, thank you for joining us for our Unite for CRT conversation tonight. We are going to be talking about travel and accessibility, which for me, I'm an avid traveler. I love to travel, and I'm learning so much just from the conversations that I've had with our guests earlier in preparation for this meeting. And I cannot wait for you guys to hear from them as well. They have a wealth of information. I know we have a couple of new faces, so before we get going, I just want to just give you guys a quick background on Unite for CRT and welcome the new faces, welcome back the old faces, and get this party started because this will be a really, really fun night. So just a real quick brief history on Unite for CRT. A group of us get together once a year and we go advocate on Capitol Hill for complex rehab technology. And it's something that, oh my goodness, we haven't been able to do the last 2 years and in person anyways. And it's been very, very hard being away from these people because it's become a group that's definitely more like family than just a group. So I'm hoping that sooner than later we can all get back together. But basically what the hope of the group initially was is when we weren't all together advocating on Capitol Hill, that we could still speak and get together and talk about things we were doing, in our hometowns and motivate each other to keep advocating. Because once we leave Capitol Hill, the advocating isn't done for complex rehab technology. So that's how the group started. But then it just kind of evolved into so much more than that. We really just started to have great conversations with one another about topics for people that live with a disability, whether it's the person that specifically lives with a disability or it's a family member or a caregiver, anybody that can relate to that. So at first we were calling these town hall meetings, but we decided to change the name to conversations because that's really what it's turned into is, we have a topic each time. Usually we try to have a guest speaker. I interview them for 15, 20 minutes or so. And then we like to open it up to the floor and get everybody involved, everybody sharing stories, asking questions, getting the information that they want. So that's why I'm so passionate and excited about this because it's grown so much and we've developed a really good group of people. And as I said, it continues to grow and the topics that we talk about are getting very diverse. And it's just been very, very fun and very educational for me. So some of the topics that we've covered are, balancing your caregiver system, using assistive technology in your everyday world, adaptive driving. I mean, we've covered a lot of topics. So, but again, this one is something that I cannot wait to hear about because I love to travel, and Jamie, Brett, and Kelly are a wealth of information. So without further ado, I see that Kelly is joining us now too, which is wonderful. So what I would like to do is just give Jamie, Brett, and Kelly just a couple of quick minutes to introduce themselves, tell what their role is in the travel world. And then I have a couple of questions that I want to ask them to get the conversation rolling. And then again, I want to open it up to everybody. I want you guys to ask your questions, share your stories, put in your comments, because these guys are wonderful. And I want you to take advantage of some time that we have with them. So without further ado, Brett, why don't you kick us off and just give a quick, brief history about yourself and the role that you play in the travel world.
Yeah, happy to do that. And again, thank you so much for the invitation. It's an absolute pleasure to spend time with each of you today. So, as you know, my name is Brett Heising, and I'm the founder and CEO of Brett Approved Incorporated. And that's home to brettapproved.com, which is a travel and entertainment website for anybody with a physical disability or mobility challenge. We have a patent pending algorithm that's called the Brett score that basically takes the guesswork out of reviews, right? So reviews are pretty subjective. What we do is we ask a few questions, key questions, and then you rate the restaurant, hotel, or entertainment venue. And then based on those questions and your answers, of course, you get a score, 10, of course, being the highest, 1, of course, being the lowest. But what we do at Brett Approved is we flip that, kind of on its head. We don't say if Brett score, don't go. We simply say, take a look at the Brett score and make sure it meets your needs, right? So in other words, there may be a restaurant in Phoenix that gets a 2, but I know if I'm going with a couple people who are able-bodied, they can help me with my chair. On the flip side, if I know I'm going to go with 3 other buddies who are in chairs, I might want to look for something that's got an 8, a 9, or a 10. 10s are very rare. And in the post-pandemic world, or in the pandemic world, we very much switched from a business to consumer company to a business to business company. So really how we make our money is we travel the globe, working with hoteliers, working with airlines, working with anybody in the hospitality sector to make sure that they know how much money we spend writ large as a group. And just on travel, that's about 58, 59 billion a year. And really, we work with those brands to market to us in a respectful way. And I remind them, of course, that we're a very sticky market. What that means is if we find something that works and we're treated with the respect and dignity that every person deserves, no matter where they sit on the spectrum of physical ability, guess what? We'll be back. So that's kind of Bread Approved in a nutshell, and that's kind of where I fit into the industry. But it's, again, it's a wonderful pleasure to be with everybody, and I look forward to some great questions.
All right. Well, thanks, Brett. I can't wait to hear more from you as we, go through this conversation. And next, I'm going to introduce Jamie. And Jamie, I want you to give a background about yourself as well.
Absolutely. And thank you again so much for having me. I'm so excited to interact with everybody and be a part of this and hopefully get people out there traveling, because that is so important. So the way I fit into the travel industry is I am the CEO of Adventures by Jamie. So we are a full service travel agency that is special needs certified through the special needs group. And so we help everybody, disability or not, check off those bucket list trips. And myself, I have muscular dystrophy and utilize a power chair for my mobility. So clearly travel looks very, very different for me. And so it was my goal when I opened my company in 2018 to really be an advocate for others with disabilities to travel and to get out there. So I have partnered with different vendors, Disney, Universal, Hilton, Royal Caribbean, the list goes on, to talk about accessibility and work with them to make their, their places more accessible. And so I have a team of over 20 agents that all in some way, shape, or form, either they themselves have a disability, there's someone in their family. So they're very well in tune with the special needs community. And, it's just really, our desire to open the doors for people. Like I said, I can't reiterate enough, just to get out and see the world. And with my YouTube channel, Adventures by Jamie, just trying to show what it's like in certain areas to travel. I know myself, before I go on a trip, I will research on YouTube to see, can I get on that ride at Disney? What are the cabins like on Royal Caribbean cruise line? And so with my YouTube, I hope to be able to easily answer those for people. And yeah, so that's sort of how we fit into all of this.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad you joined us tonight. And I look forward to building a relationship with you and hopefully booking a trip here pretty soon. So
yes.
Pretty exciting. So, all right. And the final guest on our panel tonight is Kelly. Kelly, thanks for joining us. And please share a couple of words about yourself and your role in the travel industry.
Well, hello. I apologize for my tardiness. I was having technical difficulties. Was trying to get on earlier and just having some issues. So I don't work in the travel industry per se right now. I do have 9 years experience as a corporate travel agent. I am a wheelchair user. I have been for 22 years as a result of a spinal cord injury, car crash. So I'm a T6 complete paraplegic. I'm a subject matter expert in accessible travel, but it sort of happened on accident. I went to get my master's in disability studies, got an ADA coordinator certification. So learned a great deal about, how Title III of the ADA pertains to travel, how the ACAA pertains to travel, as well as the other disability rights laws. And then I'm an Army wife, so I move around all the time. So I had the opportunity to live in Europe. So to make a long story short, I've been to 47 countries on 5 continents. as a wheelchair user, as well as 45 states. And part of that, the states is part of that's business travel speaking. So I'm a speaker, and part of that is leisure. But I've traveled so much that I've had to learn, what's accessible, what's not. And a lot of people contact me for travel advice. So I'm in the field, but I don't have a business right now.
No, you're still a wealth of information. So I'm glad you're with us tonight. So thanks for joining us, Kelly. Well, I'm just going to pose a couple of questions real quick to our group of experts. And then after that, like I said, I just kind of want to open it up to everybody else. So a couple of things that I am curious about, as again, I love to travel. For you guys, my first question is, what has been the best destination for you guys? And based that on accessibility also, where would you say has been one of the best places that you've been able to visit? Or you could recommend that as well.
You want domestic or international?
You can tell me anything and everything.
Oh, it's all a balance, right? Between the fun of the place, how wonderful the place is, and accessibility. So I personally, if we're talking about international, I would start, if you've never been abroad, I would start with Western Europe. If you want to leave the country, either Canada or Western Europe, preferably be the UK. France is a little less accessible than the UK, but you could also do France or Australia if you want to get on a really, really long flight. Also accessible there. I went to Paris alone for a week as a wheelchair user in 2004. No tour groups, no help. So it's doable, but it's difficult, and you've really got to put a lot of planning in. But as far as domestically, and I think Jamie and Brett will back me up on this, is touristy places tend to be the most accessible, like Las Vegas, like Disney, like Washington, D.C. And I'll let them take it, answer the question. So.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. And it makes sense, right? I mean, places where there are the most people are going to be the most accessible because they have to be, right? And so what I always tell people in terms of travel, be it domestic or international or whatever you want to do, is try and find those places that you want to see. But a little very helpful little hack is maybe go off hours, right? So when you're in Europe trying to take in the sights, you can be inundated by cruise ship guests or whatever. So I always try and either get up early and get out, or go late. I find by going off hours, you're going to see a little bit more, and it's just a little less hectic. In terms of my favorite destination, I always say the same thing. It's the next one. It's wherever I'm going next. But I would have to say, I really enjoyed, I was in Paris in 2019 for a speaking engagement. I really enjoyed that. There's a misconception. Everybody was telling me, hey, people in Paris aren't gonna be helpful. They're not gonna do this. They're not gonna do that. I found the complete opposite. I mean, if I looked for a half a second like I was having trouble, and I did, I mean, it was an adventure. I mean, I had 3 people, lifting my chair up over a curb cut or doing whatever. So I think it really is a balance of putting out the energy that you want to receive, right? We know that travel is going to be challenging for us, but if you're open-minded and you plan in advance, the travel agents who worked for me at the time checked out 31 hotels in Paris. And of those 31, we found 3 that would work for me in terms of the shower. So I can tell you definitively that the Hotel Nice in Paris works, because I've been there and done that. And in terms of domestically, I'd say my favorite destination, or where I recommend people coming to get a little sun, believe it or not, is my adopted hometown of Phoenix, Arizona. It's flat, it's brand new. City was designed by the Army Corps of Engineers, so it's a perfect grid. It's hot in the summer, but you don't trip on heat. You don't have to shovel it. So if you're looking for a little sun, I'd say, come to North Scottsdale, and tons of accessible restaurants, tons of accessible attractions. So that's kind of where I come down on that.
Awesome.
And I just have to piggyback on what they both said. I totally agree. I have found with a lot of places, it's interesting to see how the vendors, go after accessibility. They either look at it as customer service related and really helping to fit those needs, or it's just a compliance issue. And that's all they care about is fitting the ADA requirement. I've been on both ends of the coin. And for me, I'm a Florida girl, and living here, I'm an hour and a half away from Disney and all the attractions in Orlando. So Disney is by far one of my favorite, and just the Orlando area is one of my favorite places to visit, just because it is so close by, but the accessibility is phenomenal. There are big differences though between Disney and Universal as far as accessibility is concerned, that I have found. I love Vegas as well, but I have to say one of my favorite ways to travel is to hop on that cruise. You get the shows every night, delicious food. I have found them to be extraordinarily accessible, and even the ports that I've been to have been very accessible for me.
Well, that's a perfect transition for me, because that's what I wanted to learn more about. Is I want to hear about advice, experiences, everything that you guys have a little bit of knowledge about taking a cruise, booking a cruise, being on a cruise, because I have not done that myself, and that's something that I cannot wait to do. So please tell me information on the cruises.
I guess I'll start. And I think that Jamie knows more than I do about cruises. So she'll probably want to talk longer. And then I'm not sure about Brett, but I've been on 4 cruises, Baltic cruise, and a training cruise, and 2 Caribbeans, 1 Western and 1 Eastern. So I've only been on 4. The interesting thing is the ones that port in the United States, you're going to have fewer accessibility problems overall than the ones that are overseas that do not port in the US. And I found that, just straight up, the same ship that left Venice did not have tables by the coffee shop. And I went and found the accessibility officer and said, there's steps to get the coffee shop, but normally there's tables down here on the lower level. And they said, oh, we moved those when this part of the year, and the ship's in Italy. Now, when it's in Florida, they're down because, ADA and lawsuits and all that stuff. So found that interesting. But like Jamie said, cruising, easy peasy breezy. There's not all that go, 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 getting in and out of the car and parking. And it's just, I think it's a wonderful way, a stress-free way to travel, because you just, you go to your room and then go to dinner and go to the show. And I just think it's a low stress way to go. And I recommend cruising.
Yeah, this is fun. I'm going to be a bit of an outlier. I don't, and I wanted to make friends, but I don't really enjoy cruising, right? I'm kind of more of a, figure out where you want to go and kind of airdrop in, if you will, for lack of a more eloquent phrase. And I've been on 2 cruises and I've enjoyed them both. But it's really not my cup of tea. I don't like having, like, for example, I don't like having only maybe 10 or 12 hours in a port of call. I really like to explore a little bit more, because speaking for myself and myself alone, it takes me a while to get up and get out and get my bearings. And so I always feel like on a cruise, every time I'm just getting familiar with a port, it's time to hoof it back to the ship and get back on. So we sell a lot of cruises. I mean, cruises are very popular for the reasons that my fellow panelists have outlined. But as for me, I'd rather choose a destination and just kind of figure it out and try my best to kind of immerse myself in the local culture.
For me, I've been on a few cruises as well, and most of them have all been like Caribbean based, so I haven't gone to Italy, and I'm dying to go on an Alaskan cruise. I want to do that so badly. So that's on the list. But for me, one of my concerns was, what is the cabin? What is the stateroom going to be like for accessibility? And I found it extraordinarily accessible, actually more accessible than some of the hotels that I've stayed in. So that was very, very exciting to me. And I just, on board, the staff has always been so helpful with anything that I needed. I found that getting in and out of, say, the pools, the hot tubs, they all had the chairlift for you. So I really feel like on board, the cruising is very accessible. When I would be at ports, we were at some ports that you could go from the ship to the dock without, a problem. There were others that you had to transfer from ship to smaller boat, then to the dock. And, that was a little scary because the ramp was really, really steep. However, they had adequate amount of people to make sure that my chair was safely going up or down, and it worked wonderfully. So I guess for cruises.
And one thing, okay, so that's 2 for cruises, 1 against. I know when I'm outnumbered. But one thing I would share with everyone is that cruise lines are not people, right? People were all created equally, no matter who we are, what we believe, our skin color. We're all created equally. Cruise lines vary greatly, right? So the first step I always tell clients: figure out where you want to go, and find a cruise line that meets your needs. Right. I mean, if you have young, teenage kids, you want to party like a rock star, then get on Carnival. If you want something a little more subdued and laid back, maybe a celebrity cruise line is a celebrity cruise option is better for you. They've been great partners for us here at Brett Approved. I know when Downton Abbey was in its heyday, one of my wife's favorite shows, everybody wanted to go on a Viking cruise, and those are not accessible at all. If you're out of a chair and just have limited mobility, like we had some clients who had, pretty challenging arthritis, but they weren't in chairs and they were able to use walkers and do their thing. That worked for them. But in terms of a chair user doing a Viking river cruise or any of their competitors, just know going in, it's just not going to work. And what I always told people, let's find something that does work, because there's nothing worse than spending a ton of money and being reminded about every day that there's a bunch of cool stuff you can't really do, right? I mean, that gets frustrating real quick. So at Brett Approved, we always celebrate what works. And so the cool thing about cruising is that there are so many options that I guarantee you we can find, or Jamie or anybody can find, any travel agent worth their salt is going to be able to find you something that's awesome. And it's going to be a wonderful experience.
That's a great point there, Brett, is really kind of try to pinpoint where you're going and what's going to work best for your itinerary, the group that you're with. That all makes a lot of sense. So that's really good information. My last question I have for you guys, because I want to open it up to everybody else and really have them get the information that they want. But what's been the biggest struggle you guys have either experienced yourself or experienced while trying to book travel for others, someone with a disability? What would you say was the biggest struggle? And what was the way you guys were either able to solve it, make it work? What's been your experience down that road? Because I know some people are kind of hesitant to travel that do have a disability.
Okay. I guess I'll just start because I don't know. So I just want to say one more thing about cruises real quick, because it's so important. Generally, 9 times out of 10, the newer the ship, the better, the more accessible. I just think that people don't think about that. But if you're researching, the newer the ship, the better. Celebrity Edge, for instance, their newest ship. But if you're researching cruises, that's one thing you want to look at, because they refurbish, but they can't make everything perfect. Like, a ship that they built 2 or 3 years ago. Okay. So hassles, fiascos. You're asking about hassles and fiascos, right?
Yes.
My nemesis is hotel bed heights, right? So I know not everybody hates the real high beds, but I'm a para and I'm a manual chair user, and it's just so hard. And unfortunately, in the 2010 DOJ regs for the ADA, there are no bed height regulations. The bathroom can be perfect with the grab bars and the thermostat's low and everything's great and like it's supposed to be, but you can't get in the bed, right? So I used to it's dangerous, but put a sliding board under, and then you guys, some of you know what I'm talking about. And you lean over and you grab the sheet as hard as you can and just hope and grab real fast. And if you forgot your soda or the remote, too bad. You're just going to stay there because you're not getting back up. You guys know what I'm talking about. Enough of that, right? So now I just have them move the bed frame out, and that the bed frame for my height of chair, pulling the bed frame out actually puts it just level with mine almost every time. And that seems to solve the problem. And when my husband's with me, he just does it, or the front desk will do it. Once in a great while, they'll have lower beds in the accessible rooms, but that is the exception. But that's my biggest hassle, and it's dangerous. And I've fallen twice I travel a lot though, so it's like 1% of the time, but still. And then I'd say the other thing is car rental agencies putting hand controls in SUVs. You book it, weeks in advance, and you go over it and over and over. A sedan, a coupe, anything. I don't care what color. I don't care. I can't get an SUV, and you show up. It's happened 3 times. I show up, and then the hand controls are in an SUV, so can't get in.
Right.
So that ends up being, and I don't want to go into all those stories because I'll take up all your time. I want to move on to another panelist, but that's been my problem. But I always get it solved because we have Americans with Disabilities Act here. So
Right, absolutely. The bed frame, pulling that out, that's a good trick. I haven't heard that, and I know that that's a struggle for a lot of people. So
I have to.
nope, that's good info. All right, Brett, Jamie, what do you guys got for us?
Yeah, I think that's wonderful info, and one of the things, and I appreciate that Kelly, that being shared. One of the things I really want to impart on everybody, and I know we know this as people with disabilities, but I think we can oftentimes forget it or take it for granted, is that disability affects each of us in different ways, right? So what may be easy for Kelly with her challenges is not easy for me as somebody who has CP, right? And so it's interesting, like you need a coupe or a sedan. I actually need an SUV. So we've got the opposite, and I always show up and it's like some sort of, Mercedes convertible, which is awesome. But then we've got another challenge. So I think, the thing that I would impart on each of us is to make sure that we as consumers with disabilities do our due diligence. There's no such thing. I mean, things are going to go wrong, right? You're going to have challenges. I've been on thousands of trips and I've never had a perfect trip ever. I mean, it's like a unicorn. It's like the Holy Grail. I can't wait to have one, but I haven't had one yet. But what mitigates the challenges is just doing research. Whether you talk to somebody like me or Kelly or Jamie, just be an informed consumer. And when you're talking about flying, inform yourself about the ACAA, Air Carriers Access Act. Familiarize yourself with a complaint resolution officer. So if there is a problem with the airline, you know who to go to. Like, just arm yourself with that knowledge, because when we're out there in the real world doing our thing, it's up to us. We have to have each other's backs, and the best way we can do that is to be knowledgeable and be prepared. I think the biggest thing and the reason we've pivoted as a company away from leisure and business travel to more of a consultancy is because the hospitality industry itself isn't prepared to engage consumers like us, right? I mean, if we think about it critically for just a moment, hospitality is probably the only industry in the world where you take the people with the least amount of money, with the least experience, and you say, hey, congratulations, you're going to be front of house. You're going to greet every single customer that comes into this hotel. Well, those young people just out of school don't really know how to interact with somebody with a disability, right? So whether we like it or not, and some days it's tough, but whether we like it or not, we have to be ambassadors. And every single time I encounter a challenge, and sometimes it makes me mad, I'm not going to lie to anybody, but every time I encounter a challenge, I try to look at it as a teachable moment, because that person, they're not trying to screw up my trip. They're not trying to have the bed too high or whatever. They just don't know. And I tell them, very frankly and very straightforward, like, look, I get that, but now that knowledge is power. And if I come back to this hotel in 2 months, I expect this to be the way it needs to be, right? But not every kid at the front desk knows that a shower bench needs to be permanently affixed to the wall and foldable in between 17 and 19 inches from the bottom of the shower, right? They just don't get it. And to Kelly, to your point, yeah, bed height is the biggest issue that we have, because there are no regulations around it. I'm working with some students from ASU, Arizona State, on designing a universally designed hotel room that would usurp and make ADA hotel rooms completely useless. Imagine going to a 100-room hotel and each room works for all of us, right? Instead of just one room with a roll-in shower, because like tubs with grab bars, they don't work for me at all, right? So I very much need the roll-in shower. So that's kind of my 2 cents on that. Apologies if I was a bit long-winded.
No, don't apologize. It's all great information from you guys. So don't apologize. I love it all. Jamie, what do you got?
I have to 100% agree with what Brett was just saying about how, we are not all created equal. You can't put us all into one box. I don't transfer myself at all. I have to be lifted. So I don't worry about a bed height. You know, I did a video about a log cabin that I stayed in Clayton, Georgia, that had the ramp and all of this. For me, it worked perfectly. But because I said it was wheelchair accessible, people were going crazy at me. No, it's not accessible. Look at the bed height. Look at this. Look at that. But it worked for me, you know. So, but what I have found in most challenging is the bathroom situation in hotels. I typically ask for a roll-in shower, and I have my own shower chair that I can bring. But if they tell me, yes, we either provide a shower chair or we have a bench that folds down and all this, then I don't worry about bringing mine, especially if I'm flying and all of that. It's one less thing. But I have had many times going to hotels that either there was no bench in the shower, and when I would call the front desk, would be told, oh, you know, all of our shower chairs are farmed out already. You know, it's first come, first serve. So I literally turned over a trash can and sat on the trash can so I could get a shower. That's unacceptable, you know. So showering has been a big issue for me with certain hotels. Another thing that I just cannot wrap my mind around, I end up staying a lot of times in suites because I find they're bigger, there's more room. And there's one particular hotel, and I'm not going to say the hotel, but in Orlando that I wanted to book a suite. And this is a massive, massive, like 800 plus room hotel. It's huge. And they said, oh, we don't have any, not one, ADA accessible suite in our entire hotel. And that just blew my mind. You know, I mean, they had over 100 ADA accessible rooms, but if I wanted a suite, they were not accessible at all. And so I partnered with them. They are actually in the process of building yet another tower to be part of their hotel. And there will now be accessible ADA, you know, suites, because it's just crazy. And I don't know about you guys, but it's a pet peeve of mine. I was just in Orlando this weekend with some of my travel agents, and we were touring about 5 or 6 different hotels. But I find this everywhere with hotels. When you are at the elevator, there always seems to be a trash can by the elevator button. And if I don't have somebody with me, I can't push the button, you know? So I don't understand why it has to be there. Move the darn trash can to the side, please, you know? But so I'm on a quest to get the trash cans moved over, you know?
Well, I think, Jamie, I think that brings up a wonderful point. You know, a lot of the businesses that I'm privileged to work with, they get a little freaked out about accessibility, right? Because they think it's going to cost them a ton of money and it's going to be uncomfortable and et cetera, and I'm going to come in there, or someone on my team is going to come in there and make everybody feel bad. And I'm not, you know, I'm not in the business of making people feel bad. The thing is, though, is that so many of these things, like a trash can by the elevator, like that doesn't cost you anything to move it.
No.
Right. And when pre-COVID, when I was working with restaurateurs quite a bit, restaurant owners and GMs, you know, I'd always tell them the same thing. You know, this restaurant is phenomenal. It's very accessible, except for when I try to access the restroom. Why do you keep high chairs and booster seats and empty kegs back here? Like, this is not an empty keg depository. Like, let's move the empty kegs somewhere else. And if you do that, you know, then it's accessible for somebody like me in a tie light manual chair. It's accessible for folks in power chairs. And it's just, and again, there's no malice in anybody's heart. They just don't think about it, right? They're just in a hurry. So yeah, we'll keep the kegs here. So it's all about, as best I can, and as best my company can, just being very respectful, very gentle, and saying, hey, there's a better way to do this, and it's not going to cost you a ton of money. Just it takes a little bit of time and common sense, right? So I think I really appreciate you bringing up that point.
I think that's a great point. I mean, even myself, and I'm just, I'm not a part of the travel industry whatsoever, but I travel quite a bit. But I try to use, when I run into issues, I try to use those as educational moments as well. And I handle it in a very professional manner. And it seems to make a huge difference. If you don't make a big stink about a situation, but you just talk to them and explain the situation and explain how it could be better. In my experiences as a wheelchair user, as a traveler, it has made a difference. I have been able to teach people and teach companies, which has been great. So that's all great information. And Jamie, I love that you bring up the trash can, because that is one of my biggest pet peeves, period, whether it's at the elevator or whether it's at a push button door in front of a building. There's a trash can, or there's like an ashtray, or there's something always in front of those buttons, and I don't get it. And most of the time I'm by myself. So I find myself sometimes literally having to push those things out of my way with my chair just to be able to get into a building or to reach an elevator button. So hallelujah, I love you. That's wonderful. I'm so glad you said that. That's just great. So that's all I want to ask you guys. I could talk to you guys forever because I love all your information, but I want everybody else to have a chance to talk with you guys too. One thing I would like to do for Jamie, Kelly, and Brett, if you guys have websites, contact info, anything that you guys want to share with people, can we leave that in the chat before we're done with this meeting? Because I think that would be great information for people, and then they can find ways to be able to contact you guys and talk to you once we get through this meeting. So I want to open it up. If you guys just want to, open your mics, ask questions. If you're not able to open mics, we can use the chat as well. But let's open it up so you guys can talk.
So Jenny, I saw a question in the chat. How is Prague as far as accessibility? A question from Mary. And I'm just going to jump in there because I went to Prague for a week.
Sure.
If you are used to traveling alone within the US or even in the more accessible countries, I would not do Prague alone. It's doable, but you don't want to do Prague alone. You're going to run into spots where there's no curb cut, and you're going to need a little help with a wheelie or whatever. There's just a lot of cobblestone. It's doable. I went for a week. I would not go solo, but is it worth the hassles? Yes. And there are some accessible hotels, not a lot of them, but there's a handful. So with proper planning, it's doable. But if I went all the way to Prague from the US, I'd go ahead and get Budapest in, and Vienna and Bratislava and all that. Just email me. So that's just my 2 cents about Prague.
Love it.
One thing I'd like to add to your chat is when you're calling a hotel, asking for a shower chair, make sure you specify a plastic permanently position, because I went to 2 hotels and I asked for a shower chair, and when I got to my room, it was a folding chair. I'm like, seriously? Like a folding chair, this is what you think would be okay in a shower? So yeah, just be very specific that it's, a medical shower chair, that it's just not a folding chair from the downstairs.
Yeah, I find that that's a wonderful point. I appreciate you sharing that, because there is a profound difference between a stool, which by nature is rickety and not very dependable from a transfer standpoint, and a proper shower chair. And so most hotels, we're getting better in the States, but most hotels, particularly in Europe, if you get anything at all, it's going to be some rickety 4-legged stool where the one of the legs is a half-inch shorter than the other ones, no matter what you do, right? We've all been in that situation, and then you take a whoopsie-daisy while you're all sudsed up. That's less than ideal. But yeah, I think that's crucially important. In fact, what I've done when I travel internationally is I have a brand of stool that I like, and I will ship it at my own expense to the hotel, and then I will say, hey, this is courtesy of your friends at Bread Approved Incorporated, and keep it on hand in case anybody needs it. And they're always flabbergasted, and that is not cheap, but that's what I have to do to feel comfortable. And I think that's another point I want to emphasize during our time together is I want each of you to take away, do whatever you need to do to feel comfortable and confident. If you have the means to ship your own stool, you shouldn't have to do it. Don't get me wrong. It's ridiculous that we have to do that. but am I going to stay home or ship my own stool? I'm going to ship my own stool. So do whatever you need to do to make it work for you.
No, that's such a good point. I ran into that myself. I specifically requested, rolling shower chairs. And oh yeah, that's exactly what it is. It happened specifically when I was in Chicago. I won't mention the hotel. And they literally gave me a stool. And I'm a C4, C5 incomplete quadriplegic. There's no way I'm going to sit on a stool while I'm trying to be bathed, because it just won't go well. So being specific, advocating, saying exactly what you need is huge.
My other tip I will give is, if you're going with more than one wheelchair user in the same room, make sure you're asking, can 2 wheelchairs park where they're not blocking the doorway? Because I know I've gone with 2 or 3 people who are all in wheelchairs, and if one parks their chair to get into the bed, no, thank God no one else is going to use the bathroom that night, because everybody's got to move for the people to get out. So make sure you're checking with the hotel if there's plenty of room to move the chairs around, so you can all park in an area where you're not blocking anybody from using anything else that they need, because that is a big, and again, it's just something that they don't think about, or many people don't, because if you're going in a wheelchair, you're usually the only one in the room in the wheelchair. You're not with somebody else, but it happens.
So I have a question. I would like to go with my family on a cruise. Sorry, Brett, to Europe. And I think that's the best way for us to see a couple of countries. I have 4 kids. I'm in a power chair. I'm thinking about a Disney cruise because that has been successful for us in the past, but we have not been to Europe. And so I'm just wondering, maybe Kelly or Jamie, you can address this. How do I find out how accessible those ports are? Like, I know that they'll have a nice little write-up, but how do I really find out how accessible they are so I can plan for those excursions?
Jamie, do you want to take that, or do you want me to talk?
I have not been to that part of cruising. Like I said, I've mainly been in the Caribbean. So since you have.
Okay, so where do you want to port out of? Where do you want the cruise to start in
I
Europe?
think you go out of Barcelona.
Okay, well, Barcelona is very, very doable. It's a lot more accessible than I thought it was going to be when I went. Barcelona is wonderful. There's plenty of things to do there as a wheelchair user, so that's good. Okay, so the ports, that's going to take some research. If you want to send me a list of ports, I put my email address in the chat. I can help you with that. Basically, it's a lot of Googling and reading, and don't just take one person's word for it. Because something's accessible to somebody may not be accessible to somebody else. It's about reading 10 different posts, blogs. Wheelchair users are always talking about accessibility when they travel, and then kind of taking it all in and making the best decision for yourself. But generally, France, the ports in France are going to be better than Italy. As far as the cities. I'm not saying don't go to Italy. Also, you always want to see if there's a tender port, if it's a port that tenders, or if it goes, what's the verbiage, Jamie? Tender versus, when it goes all the way to the dock.
Right.
Or a little boat.
Yeah.
It's a big ordeal. It's a big ordeal
Right.
if it's a power chair. And some cruise lines won't let you do the tender ports.
Right.
So I've always managed to, but I'm a manual chair user. So that also comes into question, but I'd love to help you out with that. If you send me a list, I've probably been to, I don't know, hundreds of European cities. I lived over there for 3 years. That's why I got to do that. So please send me a list and I'll help you out with that.
And is Greece even an option for a wheelchair, or? Right.
That's why I did Greece on a cruise, because I knew it would be very, very difficult. And I just went to an island and to Athens. And I get this, the Acropolis has an elevator. It's 2,500 years old. So these places around here that say, oh, there's a step, we can't make it accessible, it's 50 years old. I'm like, really? The Acropolis is over 2,000 years old. They have this big, big elevator. I just had to throw that in there. So there are things, there's efforts being made, but Greece is far from accessible.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
wouldn't
would.
fly in and do it. I would, that's a good way to cruise. You know, if you're going to go to Greece, I would cruise it.
Yeah, I agree with that, Kelly. I think that's, you know, you don't need me to tell you this, but that's great advice. So I agree with that. And I just wanted to kind of piggyback off Barcelona. I mean, if I were you, I would, you know, spend a couple days in Barcelona before the cruise, you know, before, you know, it'll give you a chance to get acclimated. And I'm not saying it's perfect, because again, it isn't. And we want to be realistic about that, but I mean, it's way more accessible than Paris, and I enjoyed Paris quite a bit. And it's way more accessible than a lot of other places I've been in Europe as well. So you're gonna have a lot of fun, especially as a power chair user. You know, power chair users, you guys can navigate obstacles that make me as a manual chair user, you know, sometimes I get a little nervous. So you know, bear that in mind as well. You're not gonna have nearly the challenges that perhaps I do, and maybe Kelly, you do with cobblestones. Cobblestones are my nemesis. I just, you know, I love history, but I hate cobblestones, and I'm not afraid to say it. And so, yeah, and then in the chat for you, I just posted a link from a guy who's well known in the disability travel sector, John Sage. He's got a really good page on accessible cruises in Europe. So between Kelly's expertise and that page, and if you have any questions for me, you know, offline, we're happy to help, and we'll get you where you need to be, and you're going to have a blast. One quick thing, how old are your kids?
They're old. They're 15 to 22.
Oh yeah, so we can find a better option than Disney for sure.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you all. Really.
You got it.
Just throwing it out there. I did the cruise to Alaska, and let me tell you, it was a hell of a lot more accessible than I thought Alaska would be. And I mean, we got to go kayaking and out in the mountains and everything. And a cruise to Alaska was enjoyable. So if that's ever something, I wouldn't go for the younger kids unless they really like the hiking and stuff like that. But a cruise to Alaska is definitely something you all want to do.
And it's in the United States, so you've got that ADA.
Yeah.
And they've got to be. So
I just can't believe how accessible Alaska was. Like, I'm thinking like I'm not going to be able to go into the mountains and so, and they have all the accessibility. You could get a track fab. You could just switch your power wheelchair over to one of those. And I was just amazed at how accessible it actually was.
I agree with you. I've only been to Anchorage and Fairbanks. I didn't go on a cruise, but I went to do speeches in both places, and I went alone. And then I took a little plane up into the Arctic Circle just because I felt like it. But it was all accessible, and hotels, and you know, everything was great. I didn't need any assistance. So anyway, while we're talking about why I just said that Alaska, you know, they have to abide by the ADA too, and they put hand controls in my rental car. They had never done it before at the Fairbanks airport, so they had someone do it in Anchorage and drove the 7 hours the car to Fairbanks because they knew they had to, because it is a law in our country. And while I'm talking about that, I'll just mention real quick for those that don't know, the ADA, there's essentially 3 ways to deal with an ADA violation. The first way is to advocate. I love the A word, advocate and educate, like we've been talking about when there's a problem. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. A restaurant a couple of weeks ago told the guy, you need to get accessible parking, you need to do this and that and that. And he did, and I helped him, and that was advocating. But sometimes it takes more. If you are interested, if you look at the ADA through a civil rights lens and you are interested in making change, you can file a lawsuit, a Title III lawsuit. We're talking hotels, car rentals, museums, theaters, things like that for ADA violations. And I'm talking big violations, not the mirrors too high, you know, I mean, bigger things.
Right.
And it's complicated. There's a lot more to it, but the whole grandfathering thing is a myth. I mean, everybody can't just get away with it when it's old. The second thing you can do is file a DOJ complaint, Department of Justice complaint. And I've done that before, and that works a lot of the time. But that's a whole nother speech. Air Carrier Access Act, if you run into discrimination on the plane, the Air Carrier Access Act, I printed out, it's 46 pages. You have a lot of rights in the United States. I printed out the EU's equivalent. In Europe, it's 10 pages. It's basically just a vague manifesto. You have a lot of rights here. So like Brett said, Google CRO, Client Resolution Officer. You have a problem, ask for the CRO. That doesn't work, file a Department of Transportation complaint. That law was passed in 1986. So there's no excuse for any discrimination. Okay, I'm
and
off.
Yeah, no, that's wonderful. And those things take time. You know, it takes energy and effort to do that. But again, it goes back to each of us has a responsibility, unfortunately, to be our own best advocate, right? And it's, you know, we've heard this is cliche, but it's true. Knowledge is power, right? So you're not going to be able to slip anything by me because I know what's up. And I want everybody, and so does Kelly, and so does Jamie, and I want everybody to be that empowered, because again, you know, people with disabilities, you know, just domestically, we spend about 58.7 billion annually every year. And just because you're in a body that works the way we wish ours did today, doesn't mean you're going to stay that way, right? So there's a chance if we live long enough that disability will touch each of us, right? And when it touched me, you know, I'm the same guy. Like I like the same stuff. It's just I navigate the world a little differently, right? So I think if we remember that, and we remember that, you know, the people we're dealing with, 99% of the time, there's no malice. There's just ignorance, and we can deal with ignorance. You know, we can impart the knowledge that we have on them and kind of watch that. There's nothing better than giving a speech and watching that light bulb go on. You know, that aha, like I get it, right? So just if you take nothing else from spending time with me today, just take that away. Do your research, be your best advocate. And if you run into trouble, get a hold of me, get a hold of Kelly, get a hold of Jamie or somebody like us, and we'll figure it out. Every challenge has a solution, every single one. Some just take longer, right?
A powerful tool to have is I take a copy of the ADA with me when I travel because I drive to most of my locations. I've driven from here to California. I take a copy with me. And if you positively advocate and educate them and show them right in the law what you're saying that they're violating, most of the time they'll comp you a night's room, they'll comp you a car, they'll comp you something because they don't want to go through the lawsuit either. As long as you're positive and you're polite and you show them exactly where they're against the ADA, more than likely, I mean, I'm not saying 100, but I've never had a problem where that they wanted to do a lawsuit. I've always got something comps to me and the problem fixed, and they're educated for the next person that comes along.
This is the book. Is this the one you carry around as the ADA standards?
Yeah.
Regs? Okay, you carry the regs around, the Title III
Yeah.
regs. Okay, I'm just gonna hold this book up. Get this book and learn it.
Yeah, I've got a little, back in the day when I first started doing this, I had a little pocket guide that I would keep with me. Now I just keep it as a PDF on my phone. I find that, you know, much more amenable, but I mean, it definitely works. And you're going to catch people off guard. When you whip those 2010 standards out, people are going to be like, holy smokes. Right. And what, to the point you just shared, like most people want to de-escalate the situation and make you as happy as possible as soon as possible. So I've gotten entire stays comp, right? And it's because of how I approach it. You know, if I'm angry and pissed, and sometimes that's, you know, anger is a valid emotion. It's just not very productive. But if I'm angry, then they're gonna match that anger. But if we come together and say, look, this is the issue that I'm having. Here is a very robust set of regulations. Let's sit down as a team and go through this. I guarantee if you say to somebody, let's sit down as a team and go through this, they're not going to know what to do. They're going to sit their ass down and go through it. Right. And then you'll figure it out, right? You'll get your free room or whatever the case may be. And if they don't, you know, say la vie, then you can escalate, as Kelly said, to next steps if necessary.
You're doing them a favor though by teaching them business law. If them being in management and the owners, they have responsibility to know business law. And this is a 30-year-old law that we're talking about. So you're doing them a big favor, expending that emotional labor and your time and energy. So.
Yeah, and it's not, and most people, you know, a lot of people don't want to do it, right? And that's perfectly okay. You know, I'm not saying everybody has to go around and be a warrior for this stuff, because we've got lives to live and things to do. But that's been my best approach, and it also happens to be my business. But sometimes, you know, I had a run-in with somebody, with a grocery store clerk, and I was talking to my wife when I got home, and I said, God damn it, you know, sometimes I just want to go to the grocery store. Like, what is going on? Why does everything have to be a teachable moment? So, you know, I don't want to mislead anybody. I get frustrated too, right? I've just learned through the years to kind of keep that in check. But you're absolutely right, Kelly. We shouldn't have to do that.
Yeah, one of the things that I would impart on everybody is the importance of using a travel agent. You know, I get asked all the time, like, why do I need you? Why go through a travel agency? You know, now I can't speak for every travel agency. Ours, we do not charge a fee to help you book your travel. But we also are there every step of the way, and the why you need us. We're there every step of the way to help you navigate how accessible are the ports. You know, we're going to help you do that research so we know, booking you for that cruise, what you can and cannot do. You know, is the hotel going to be what your needs, you know, are they going to be met going to that location? And when issues do arise, which they do, we are also there to help advocate for you. You're not, you know, you're not facing the challenge on your own. I can't tell you how many times I've hopped on the phone, you know, to be there for a client. And they're so thankful because there's someone in their corner. So a lot of people, like I said, they question, well, why do I need you? I can book it on, you know, on my own. Well, you know, you can, you're absolutely right. You know, however, why not have somebody that can be there for you and help you navigate this? And, you know, I want you to be able to just tell me what you want, and I lay everything out for you. And so you can just enjoy your trip, you know, so.
Yeah, I know our time together is coming to an end, but Jamie, that's a wonderful point. I thank you for bringing that up because, you know, as a travel agency, you know, for folks like us, that is to say with disabilities, you know, that would happen to us a lot. Like we would do a ton of research, and then the person would be like, "Oh, I found a better rate on
Yeah.
you know, TripAdvisor, right?" And then they would book it, but guess what? Then there was a problem, and then they went through a third-party vendor, and that third-party vendor doesn't care. If you go through a company like Jamie, or when we were knee deep into travel, you go through a company like us, we're going to fix the problem. And we get our money from the vendors, right? So that's how I make my money. I find accessible vendors, I negotiate a contract with them, I steer people toward hotels that work. So I never charged a dime for the consumer, or from the consumer. So I always look at it, Jamie, as kind of a belt and suspenders approach. When you hire somebody like you, you're going to have insurance when something goes wrong. You're not just going to be left twisting in the wind. They can call you or one of your colleagues, and you guys will work on a resolution. So it's definitely, in my experience, better to hire a travel agent than just go it alone. Now, Kelly is an experienced, you know, I mean, my God, you're amazing. So you might have everything down to where you feel very comfortable, but I always like having that extra bit of insurance, if you will. And that goes to another point. I would ask each of you, if you don't go through a travel agent, at the very least, please book directly with the hotel.
Yes.
Because if you book directly with the hotel can fix the problem. If you go through Priceline to save a couple bucks, Priceline, Expedia, Trip, they don't care. They just do not care, and you're calling a call center. If you have a problem and you're on site and you book through a hotel, you can say, listen, I booked directly through Marriott, so let's fix this. And then just sit there, you know, and they'll get a little nervous, but they'll fix it. And if they can't, they'll reimburse you and send you to a different hotel. That's happened to me a ton too. So thanks for bringing that up, Jamie.
Sure.
You guys, I want to be respectful of everybody's time. I know on the East Coast, it's getting a little bit later out of there. So maybe we'll just take like another question or two, and then we'll wrap it up, because I just want to make sure we're, you know, being respectful of the panelists' time and everything else, since we are in multiple time zones. So are there any final questions, thoughts that you guys want to be able to talk with Kelly, Jamie, and Brett about? All right. Well, they left you guys their information, which was awesome. So you guys can reach out to Jamie, Kelly, Brett at any time if you guys have questions, concerns, need advice, whatever the case may be. And I would suggest you guys talking to these guys, because when I met with them prior to this meeting, I just had not only fun talking to them, but like I learned a lot. And just from tonight, I've learned a ton. So don't be shy. They are wonderful people. They will be more than happy to answer questions, give advice, whatever it is that you guys need. So I want to personally thank thank Jamie, Kelly, and Brett for your guys' time, because tonight was awesome. Like I said, I love to travel. So for people that either do travel or just waiting to get out there, I think you guys gave a wealth of information and gave some encouragement to people. So I really appreciate your time and all the information. You guys are completely awesome.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you guys. And last thing that I would like to say is our next Unite for CRT conversation will be June 15th, and it's called a Road to Independence, getting a new set of wheels. And what that meeting is going to be about is talking about the process of getting a new wheelchair, whether that's power, whether that's manual. And it's actually going to be delivered by myself and Angie Kiger. Angie Kiger works for Sunrise Medical. She will definitely talk more on the professional industry side, and I will talk more on the consumer side. I am quadriplegic for 38 years, so I've definitely went through this process more than a time or two. So we felt like it was just a great way to educate people that are new to the process, or just have questions about what it looks like for family members or anything like that. So that's our June 15th meeting. It will be at 7 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Mountain Time. So we would love to have you guys join us. And thank you all so much. This was awesome. It was a great night. So thank you guys, and I hope to see you guys on June 15th.
All right, take
Thank
care, everyone.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Fantastic job, y'all.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Bye-bye.